I never imagined my wife would be the kind of person who'd leave her wedding ring on the nightstand just so she could flirt a little lighter. I guess no one does, not until the day they come home and find out the person they trusted most decided to throw all that trust in the trash. My name's Jake Monroe. Born and raised in a little town in Ohio where everybody waves and nobody locks their doors. I was always the nice guy. Held the door open. Said, "Bless you," when someone sneezed. Paid my taxes on time. Maybe that's why folks thought I was soft. Maybe I was. I met Rachel when we were both 23. She had this wild kind of energy, like every moment was a secret dare only she knew about. Her hair was always a little messy, like she didn't care if people noticed, and that somehow made people notice even more. I was smitten, plain and simple. She said she loved how steady I was. "You're like a porch light," she once told me, curled up on my chest. "You never go out, even when the storm's bad." That should have been a warning sign, I guess. Porch lights don't move. Porch lights don't talk back. They just glow until someone decides they don't need them anymore. We got married 2 years later, and I followed her across state lines to support her dream of becoming a psychology professor. She landed a position as a grad assistant at a university in a college town about 4 hours from where we started. I found work doing campus maintenance, fixing dorm pipes, changing light bulbs, the kind of work that leaves your hands calloused but your head clear. It paid decent and kept me close. Rachel moved into the dorms for student integration, or so she said. I didn't ask too many questions. She said it helped with her thesis work, some nonsense about building bonds and understanding undergraduate psychology in the raw. Sounded like a line, but I swallowed it. Soft, like always. I stayed at our apartment off campus, brought her food when I could, ran errands, helped with late-night study snacks. I was that guy. The dependable one. And every time I looked into her tired eyes and she gave me that faint smile, I told myself, she loves me. She's just tired. But last Tuesday, something cracked. It started with a chipped coffee mug. I had gone to the dorms early that morning to drop off a charger she forgot. The door to her floor was unlocked. I knew she had an early class, but I figured she'd be up by now. When I got to her door, I knocked. Nothing. So I opened it. And there it was. A coffee mug, my coffee mug, the one I gave her on our anniversary with the little cheesy message, "I'm yours. No refunds." Was cracked in half on the floor beside her bed. She wasn't alone in there. 2 guys. Young, shirtless, tangled in the same sheets I'd helped her fold last week. My heart didn't even drop. It didn't sink or shatter. It just stopped. She looked at me like I was the one cheating. Her face didn't scream guilt. It whispered annoyance. Like I'd interrupted something trivial, like I was the one overreacting. "Jake, she started, pulling the sheet up around her chest. "Don't," I said, turning around before I broke down right there in front of them. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't punch the wall. I didn't yell. I just walked away. And for the first time in my life, I realized something important, maybe even life-changing. Being soft never saved me. It only made it easier for folks to walk all over me barefoot. No more. I didn't go home right away. I drove past our apartment, past the grocery store where I used to pick up her oat milk, past the little bakery that made those blueberry muffins she liked. I ended up at an empty lot by the lake, a place we used to sit and talk about the future when we first moved here. It used to feel like hope. Now it just felt like silence. I sat on the hood of my truck, staring at the water. A breeze kicked up, carrying the early scent of summer, grass, charcoal from someone grilling in the distance, a bit of lake funk. Normally that kind of thing made me feel grounded. That day, it made me feel like a joke. I thought about the cracked coffee mug. I thought about those college boys lying in the sheets I paid for. I thought about Rachel pulling that sheet around her like I was the problem. And that was when it hit me. Not like a bolt of lightning. More like a slow burn in the chest. Heavy and warm. She didn't care. Not really. She didn't respect me. She didn't fear losing me. She didn't even bother lying to me anymore. She just assumed I'd always come back. And honestly, she was right, until that moment. I drove home eventually. Packed a bag. Just a couple changes of clothes, my tool belt, and the baseball glove my dad gave me before he passed. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't staying under that roof again. Rachel didn't call that night. Or the next. I guess she figured I'd cool off and crawl back. But the truth was, something in me had broken. And it wasn't the kind of break you fix with flowers or time. It was the kind that sets a man free. I spent 2 nights at a buddy's house. Curtis. Big guy, worked the night shift in campus security. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a beer and pointed to the couch. "You good?" he asked. "No," I said. "But I'm getting there." I went back to work like nothing had happened. Repaired a busted AC in Delta Hall. Tightened the hinges on a freshman's closet door. Replaced ceiling tiles that some kids knocked out with a lacrosse ball. My hands moved automatically. My mind? It was working overtime. I started watching Rachel. Not obsessively. Just, differently. I saw her walking to class with 2 of the guys I recognized from that morning. She laughed, flipped her hair. Like a teenager in heat. One of them smacked her ass playfully, and she didn't even flinch. She liked it. She wasn't trying to hide it. Not anymore. She had become something I didn't recognize, maybe she always was, and I just never wanted to see it. That part hurt the most. That I loved someone who wasn't real. I started to think about revenge. Now, I ain't the kind of guy who gets mean. Not naturally, anyway. But you'd be amazed how clear things become when you stop caring about being the good one. There's a strange kind of peace in letting go of what people think of you. And I realized something else too. She had one weakness. She needed to be adored. She fed off admiration like a stray cat eats scraps, greedy, wild, desperate to stay full. So I decided I'd starve her. I'd turn the students on her. Slowly, subtly, the way a cold leak ruins the foundation of a house, quietly at first, then all at once. I had access to the dorms. I knew the halls, the students, the RAs. I heard things. I saw things. And most importantly, they trusted me. The maintenance guy. The harmless, helpful Jake. They never saw me coming. It started with whispers. The kind that float down dorm hallways when no one thinks the guy fixing the water heater is listening. I'd show up with a wrench and a quiet nod, and the students would keep talking like I was invisible. And the things they said? Let's just say Rachel's extracurricular activities were more well-known than I thought. Dude, she invited Josh to her office after class again. I heard she's letting Kyle skip exams. Wonder why? I saw her leaving Delta at 2 a.m. barefoot. I never said a word. Just logged it all away in that new part of my brain that had stopped being soft. I didn't need to raise my voice. I just needed to tilt the right domino and let gravity do the rest. The first one was a junior named Sean. Sweet kid. Bit awkward. Had a crush on Rachel and thought she actually cared. I caught him one afternoon pacing outside her office, looking like he was about to puke. She ghosted me, he muttered when I passed by. I thought we had something. I leaned against my mop handle. You ever think maybe she's got a whole list of somethings going on? He blinked. You think so? I didn't answer. Just gave him a look that said more than I ever could. 3 days later, Sean told his roommate. The roommate told a friend. The friend told a girl in Rachel's seminar. And just like that, the fire was lit. The thing about universities is, they run on reputation. One scandal, even a whisper of one, and the whole tower starts to tremble. Especially when you're married to a man on staff. One night, I went back to the dorms under the excuse of repairing a broken fire alarm. I walked past her floor, slow and casual, and heard voices inside. Boys laughing. Rachel's voice, soft and breathy. Then something heavy hitting the wall, probably her shoe, maybe her dignity. I knocked anyway. They went silent. I waited. Rachel cracked the door open, wearing a robe that wasn't tied very well. Her eyes widened. Jake? I just smiled. Fire alarms fixed. She stared at me like I was a ghost. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Just, uncertain. Like I wasn't playing my role anymore, and she couldn't figure out the new script. Before she could say anything, I nodded once and turned to leave. I heard one of the guys behind her mutter, "That's your husband?" I grinned to myself all the way down the hall. The next week, I did something bold. I slipped a printed list under a few dorm doors, no names, just dates and room numbers. Places where Rachel had been seen with students. It wasn't aggressive. Just facts. Hints. Breadcrumbs. By Friday, the psychology department chair sent out a vague email about professional boundaries and reaffirming ethics. Rachel didn't show up to her morning class. Her students started talking behind her back. One even threw a condom on her office door as a joke. She stormed out of the building that day like a woman unraveling. I watched from across the quad, leaning against the side of my truck, sipping gas station coffee. It felt good. Not happy good. But just. Like I was finally standing in my own skin. Curtis called that night. "You alright, man? You seem different." "Yeah," I said, looking at my reflection in the mirror. "I think I'm finally waking up." Because the truth is, Rachel didn't break me. She built me. She gave me the gift of being done. And I wasn't finished yet. I didn't stop at rumors. That was just the spark. What came next was the burn. See, I had time on my side. Rachel thought I was out of the picture, licking my wounds, probably sleeping in my truck like some pitiful puppy. What she didn't realize was I'd moved into phase 2. I started gathering receipts. Literal ones, too. When you work maintenance at a college, you have access most folks don't think about. Building key cards. Print logs. Even network history if you know the right IT kid, which I did. His name was Levi. Brilliant, twitchy, and owed me a favor for not reporting the hydroponics setup in his closet freshman year. "Jake, you sure you want to see this?" he asked, swiveling his chair around in the back of the server room. I nodded. He tapped the keyboard and brought up her IP usage. Late-night logins. File transfers. Video chats labeled with student email addresses. One clip, timestamped 3 weeks ago, was audio only, but the sounds were unmistakable. And no, it wasn't a study group. "Can you get these files onto a USB for me?" I asked. Levi raised his eyebrows. "All of them? Every last one?" I didn't even flinch when he handed it over in a little manila envelope. I'd felt more pain when I stepped on a Lego barefoot. That weekend, the school was hosting its annual faculty-student retreat. They rent out a lakeside lodge about 40 minutes north. Bonfires, team building, all that fake bonding crap. Rachel was on the panel to speak about emotional intelligence in academic settings. Oh, the irony. I showed up late Saturday morning with a fresh collared shirt, clean jeans, and the kind of calm that makes people nervous. Curtis was with me, technically for security, but mostly just to keep me from slapping someone. Rachel spotted me the second I walked into the rec hall. Her face froze, hand midair while she spoke to the Dean of Behavioral Sciences. She quickly excused herself and came storming toward me. "What the hell are you doing here?" she hissed, pulling me aside near the coffee station. I leaned in, all polite-like. "I came to support my wife." "That's still what you are, right? Unless you've traded me in for someone with less chest hair and more TikTok followers." Her face flushed. "Don't start this here." "I didn't," I said, sliding the USB drive into her blazer pocket with one smooth motion. "But you will want to watch that before you give your little speech." She stared at me like she didn't know whether to slap me or run. I just smiled and walked off. 10 minutes later, she was supposed to take the stage. She didn't. Instead, I saw her tear out the front door like the building was on fire. That's when I knew I'd won the first round. But I wasn't after embarrassment. I was after clarity. I wanted her to feel what I felt when I walked into that dorm room. I wanted her to sit in silence and know she had been caught, not just physically, but spiritually. All her lies, her smug little manipulations, her weaponized affection, it all came undone in the span of a single file folder. Later that night, I got a text from her. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while. Then typed, "We already did. You just didn't listen." And I left it at that. Because by then, I realized something important. I didn't need closure from her. I didn't need her to cry, to beg, to fall apart in my arms like some soap opera apology. I didn't need anything from her at all. She used to own my peace of mind. Now, she was just background noise. And I was finally in control of the volume. After the retreat, Rachel went quiet. No texts. No calls. No little, "Where are you?" check-ins that used to buzz through when she wanted to know how long she had before I walked in on her sins. Just silence. And that silence? It felt like rain after a drought. Peaceful. Clean. I moved into a small apartment behind the auto shop where Curtis worked weekends. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom above the garage with a creaky floor and windows that stuck, but it was mine. No perfume on the pillow. No strange shoes by the door. No lies echoing in the halls. I didn't tell anyone where I went. Not even my parents. Not that they'd care. They were more in love with Rachel's charm than my well-being anyway. They always said she was too good for me. Turns out they were right, just not in the way they meant. I kept working maintenance. Stayed busy. Fixed busted locks, replaced broken glass, patched drywall after another fraternity accident. And the whole time, students kept talking. Rachel's name didn't carry the shine it used to. The rumors were like mold. Once they set in, there was no scrubbing them out. Some students dropped her classes. Others just smirked when she walked by. A few left notes on her door that she tore down before anyone could read. And then, one day, she vanished. Just like that. Gone. Her name disappeared from the faculty list. Her office door was left ajar with a dusty desk and no forwarding address. No goodbye email. No last lecture. The boy she used to cheat with the most, Tyler, a senior majoring in sociology, asked around about her. Said she blocked him on everything. He looked genuinely heartbroken. She said we were going to move in together, he told me once in the cafeteria line. She said she was leaving you for me. I grabbed a tray and shrugged. She told me she was loyal. He didn't say another word. That's when it hit me, Rachel wasn't just a cheater. She was a shapeshifter. She became whatever people wanted, only to hollow them out later. A performer with no stage left. But that wasn't my story anymore. Because I wasn't the boy standing outside her dorm, trying to understand why I wasn't enough. That kid? He vanished too. Now I spent my evenings learning small engine repair, fixing up old motorcycles I bought cheap from the local junkyard. I started reading again, stuff I never made time for before. Hemingway. Faulkner. Even some Vonnegut. I joined a gym. Not to get revenge fit or impress anybody, but because I wanted to feel strong for me. I was building someone new. One late Friday night, I was locking up after fixing a hot water pump in the science building when I found an envelope tucked under my truck's wiper. No name. Just Jake scribbled in blue ink. I opened it under the parking lot lights. Inside was a letter. I'm sorry. I never stopped loving you. I just didn't know how to be loved back. I hope one day you forgive me. Or forget me. Either one would be better than what I did. R. I stood there for a while, the night cool and silent around me. Then I folded it up, stuck it in my glove box, and drove off without a word. Because some apologies are just too late. And I wasn't soft anymore. The days rolled on. The hurt didn't sting like it used to. It dulled into something more manageable, like an old bruise you can press without flinching. That's what Rachel became to me, a healed bruise. I didn't think about her every morning anymore. Didn't search her face in strangers. I just got up, had my coffee, and got to work. But then something strange happened. A new adjunct professor moved into Rachel's old office. Dr. Mason Black. Young guy. Maybe 35, sharp dresser, expensive watch, real smooth type. The kind of man that made you feel underdressed just standing next to him. But there was something off. Too polished. Too aware of his charm. One afternoon, I was fixing the radiator in the psych wing and overheard him on the phone. He was talking to someone about keeping the narrative tight and not letting her drag us down. I didn't think much of it until I heard the name Rachel. I froze. He hung up a minute later, came out of his office, and spotted me. You the maintenance guy? He asked. I nodded. Name's Jake. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Rachel spoke highly of you. Did she? I said, wiping my hands on my shirt. Funny. She never mentioned you. He tilted his head slightly. We were close. Briefly. Guess I didn't make her highlight reel. That confirmed it, he was one of them. Maybe not a student, but definitely one of her toys. A man who thought she was the prize. I could have let it go. Could have walked out that door and never looked back. But like I said, I'm not soft anymore. So I played along. I nodded and said, small world, and let him walk away thinking I was just some quiet maintenance guy who got left behind. Meanwhile, I started digging. Turns out Mason wasn't just a professor. He ran a podcast on emotional manipulation in modern relationships. Real slick production. Sound effects, guest interviews, dramatic background music. The kicker? His latest episode was titled, The Danger of Loving the Broken, a case study. It didn't take long to realize who the case study was. Rachel. He'd taken our entire story, twisted it, stripped the context, polished it up for his listeners. She was the wounded genius. The woman with a troubled past and a bleeding heart. I was the overbearing husband who stifled her light. It was a masterpiece of deception. I almost respected it. Almost. So I made a plan. I contacted Levi again, the same tech kid who'd helped me with the USB files. Think you can trace where Dr. Black records his podcast from? I asked. Levi grinned. Want me to hack him? Nope, I said. I just want to give him a better story. We found out he was renting a small recording studio downtown every Tuesday night. So the next Tuesday, I waited outside the building with a manila envelope of my own. Inside? Every email Rachel had ever sent me during the affair. Her handwritten notes, her deleted messages, the audio files from her dorm. And a little voice memo of my own. I slipped it into the mailbox labeled Mason Black Productions, and walked away. 2 days later, his podcast disappeared from every platform. Just gone. No explanation. The college's website quietly updated his profile. Suddenly he was on indefinite leave. And Rachel? I heard through the grapevine she'd checked herself into a wellness retreat. Probably trying to rewrite her life into another chapter of victimhood. But me? I was finally free of their narrative. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the fool. I was just the guy who stopped being soft and learned how to play the game smarter. By the time fall rolled back around, the leaves outside the dorms had started turning that fire orange color I used to love. Everything looked cleaner somehow, less cluttered. The air was crisp. Quiet. Even the freshmen, buzzing around campus like they ran the world, couldn't ruin the stillness that had finally settled in me. I was getting better. Not perfect, not whole, but better. Then one Saturday morning, while I was under a busted vending machine in the Commons, Curtis walked up with a bag of donuts and a weird look on his face. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, crouching beside me. "Rachel's back." I slid out from under the machine. "Back where?" "Here. On campus. I just saw her talking to the dean." I dusted off my hands. "You sure it was her?" Curtis nodded. "Same fake smile. Same expensive boots. Only now she's wearing glasses like she's trying to be someone else." I should have felt angry. Or worried. Or something. But I didn't. I felt amused. Later that week, I spotted her on the quad. She was wearing a long beige coat, holding a coffee cup too big for her hands, standing near the same bench where she used to meet Tyler. For a second, I wondered if she came back for closure. Or maybe redemption. But knowing Rachel, it was probably neither. She spotted me before I could duck away. "Jake," she said, almost relieved. "Rachel." She stepped toward me, slower than she used to, like she was waiting for me to run. "Can we talk?" "Already are." She gave a soft laugh like we were old friends. "I've been through a lot." "So have I." I thought maybe we could clear the air. I looked at her closely. The makeup couldn't hide the wear in her face. The lines around her eyes were new. The charm? Still there, but dimmer. Like a bulb about to burn out. "There's nothing in the air," I said. "Not anymore." She looked down. "I know what I did." "No, you don't," I told her. "You know what you did to you. Not what you did to me." She blinked fast like she might cry. I didn't flinch. "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." I was scared. So was I. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn notebook. "I kept a journal. From back then. It's yours if you want to read it." I didn't take it. "I don't need to understand your side to know who I am now," I said. "That boy you crushed? He's gone. You did that. But the man you left behind? I'm proud of him." She swallowed hard. "Do you forgive me?" I thought about it for a second, really thought about it. "Yeah," I said. "But not for you. For me." Her shoulders sank like she'd been holding that breath for years. "Goodbye, Rachel." She nodded slowly. "Goodbye, Jake." I walked away without looking back. There was no dramatic pause, no music swelling in the background, no Hollywood ending. Just me, the sound of leaves crunching under my boots, and the quiet. The kind of quiet you earn. After I walked away from Rachel for the last time, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel powerful either. I just felt level. Balanced. Like a stack of bricks that had been uneven for years was finally reset. It's a strange thing, realizing you don't need to carry someone else's guilt around anymore. Like taking off a coat you didn't even know you were wearing. The next week, I cleaned out my tiny maintenance office in the back of the library. The same one I used to hide in after her betrayal, when the silence screamed and the walls knew too much. I packed up the few things I had, an old thermos, a cracked photo frame with a picture of my dad and me fixing a lawnmower, and a notebook full of names and rooms I'd once cared about more than I should have. Curtis came by as I was locking the door. "You quitting?" he asked, looking surprised. "Nope," I said. "Graduating." He raised an eyebrow. "You going back to school?" "Not exactly. The truth is, I'd spent the past few months taking online night classes. Psychology. Sociology. Even a bit of philosophy. I needed to understand people, not to forgive them, but to make sense of how they tick. Especially people like Rachel. And people like me. I was never dumb. Just quiet. But pain makes you curious. Hurt makes you pay attention. And what I'd learned had lit a fire in me. I told Curtis the rest over coffee later that afternoon. I was applying for a new position, a counselor's assistant role at the same college. "You serious?" he asked, almost choking on his donut. "You? Talking people off ledges and giving advice? Why not?" I grinned. "I've been on the ledge. I know what it feels like. Hell, I lived there for months." He smiled, then nodded. "You'll be good at it. Scary good." Before I left that coffee shop, I opened my phone and deleted the last thing that tied me to her, an old folder titled Proof. It had photos, recordings, emails. All the wreckage of what she did to me. But I didn't need receipts anymore. I'd cashed them in. That same day, I went back to the dorm for one last repair job, a stuck window on the second floor. The exact floor where it had all come crashing down. As I worked, I could hear voices in the hall. Young voices. Students laughing, yelling, joking like nothing in the world could ever break them. I used to be one of them. Naive. Hopeful. Soft. I closed the window, packed my tools, and looked at my reflection in the glass. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man. And he was done apologizing for growing up the hard way. It's strange, really, how the worst chapter of your life can turn into the very one that sets you free. I used to think pain would always carry her name, that every ache I felt would trace back to that dorm, to those students, to that betrayal. But I was wrong. Pain grows old too. And I outgrew it. 2 months after I left my job at the college, I started the new one. Counseling assistant. It wasn't glamorous, mostly just listening, taking notes, and making sure no one fell through the cracks. But I liked it. I liked showing up for people in ways no one had for me. Not back when it happened. Not when I was choking on humiliation and sleeping on a cot in the boiler room. Some nights I'd stay late, helping kids who were on the verge of making the same dumb choices I once made, trusting too much, giving too much, thinking love made you weak if you lost it. I never gave names, but I told pieces of my story when it felt right. And you know what? They listened. Turns out, people don't need perfect advice, they just need truth. One rainy night, I walked out of the office just as Rachel was walking in. She didn't see me. Her coat was soaked, her hair a mess. She looked older now, not just in her face but in her posture. Like something in her spirit had folded in on itself. She was there for counseling. I could have stopped her. Could have said something, anything. But I didn't. Because my story didn't belong to her anymore. I walked past, and it was like stepping through a curtain into the next part of my life. That weekend, I drove upstate and visited my dad's grave. Told him about everything. About the betrayal. About the comeback. About how I learned to stop being soft, not by becoming cruel, but by becoming solid. You were right, I said, standing under the oak tree where we used to drink root beer and talk about engines. Life doesn't hand out fairness. But it does hand out second chances, if you're mean enough to earn M, and kind enough not to waste M. The wind picked up like he was answering. I smiled. Later that night, I went home, brewed coffee in a chipped mug, and sat at my little desk by the window. The same one where I once stared at the campus in the dark, wondering what the hell had happened to me. Now I knew. I'd been tested. And I passed. Not by becoming a monster. Not by dragging her name through the mud. But by surviving her, quietly. By walking away clean. By choosing to grow instead of rot. They say revenge is best served cold. But I think the best revenge is peace. And I had mine. At last.